and welcome to Melodies of Life. I'm your host, Anna Enka. Today's episode is about surviving sexual abuse and being trafficked. Love is the universal human need, but in the wrong hands, it is the most powerful weapon used in sex trafficking operations. Contrary to popular misconception, sex trafficking rarely begins with kidnapping by a stranger. Instead, sex traffickers groom their victim by using love, a romantic love, friendship, and familial love to manipulate them into cooperating in their own exploitation. Through no fault of their own, many children have lived the early part of their life experiencing things that most people could not even imagine. Their upbringing included not only being sexually abused, but also being a victim of human trafficking. The crime of human trafficking involves being forced, manipulated, or tricked into activities that a person would not otherwise engage in, such as selling sexual services or doing any kind of work without being paid. As a survivor, we all know too well the horror and fear of being raised in a sexual abusive environment. Waking up daily, wondering what is waiting at the moment's notice, and being powerless to stop it or avoid it for a significant length of time. For survivors of human trafficking, breaking free from the exploiter is often just the beginning of a long, hard journey. Most needed long-term support to truly heal from a physical and emotional and mental traumas that they have experienced long after the exploitation has ended. Sadly, few can find it. If you have ever said anything negative about a new love interest to an infatuated friend, you may well have learned on an unfortunately dangerous lesson. No one says thank you when you criticize that person. They think they're in love with each other and pinning their hopes on. In fact, quite the opposite, I would say. Most people don't react well, at least in the moment, and to begin being told that their significant other is bad news, it does not go very well. I have been there many times, but I urge you to do it anyway. It may help someone out of a painful trafficking situation, and here is why. While the myths and stereotypes about human trafficking makes it seem like most trafficking begins with kidnapping and violence, the reality is that a huge percentage of sex trafficking victims were trafficked by someone they loved and trusted. The way love is weaponized and wielded depends on the type of trafficking situation. In a familiar situation, a child is sold by their own parent, who the child depends on for both financial and, more importantly, emotional support. The child is groomed through the natural process of a child growing up and attaching to a family members. They have been taught what love is supposed to look like, in some cases, by the very person who then exploit them. To maintain the love of their families or uphold their family norms, they agree to sell sex. Romantic love is also a powerful part of the trafficking arena. The classic scenario involves Romeo. He pimps out who purposefully target women and girls. So he goes to clubs, online, wherever he's going to find these girls, right? And then he sweeps them off their feet. Then they slowly or carefully convince the victim that their love requires them to sell sexual services. It's very innocent in the beginning, and so not a lot of people see that there's anything wrong with that, especially the young girls today. They're really easy, and they have no problem selling sex for money. The way in which this process plays out are not always the same, and not always blatant like that. But if you understand how sex traffickers groom their targets through manipulation of love, you can see it happening. These are the moments when you must be that friend. It is not a matter of snatching your friend out of harm's way that they may think. Your friend probably won't thank you at the moment, right? Or probably won't break up with the person that you are telling them about, or maybe even or given any thought about it. They're just going to blow it off, right? But think about it. Eventually, what you told your friend about how traffickers operate will come back and help make things clear and maybe keep them safe, right? So it's always worth to try, even if they're not open to it. When I work with victims and survivors, I tell them, you have a choice. You can choose how you want to go about your healing journey, and you can choose the help you want, okay? And I'm here to support you either way. You decide when you're ready to report your situation that you have to. And I want to tell you about a personal story. And this story is about a young girl, Karen. She was alone in the big city, New York, at 15. And Karen started to seek the love and acceptance that she was not getting from her parents. And she found it online with a 36-year-old man who she formed a relationship with. You know, they were chatted and talking and texting and all those things that these young people are doing these days. And sooner than later, she got a beautiful house to live in, expensive sport car to drive. She had hot sex, luxurious trips to the best destinations in the world, ate at fancy dinners on the best restaurants all over the world, and had endless money for shopping. And the most important thing she got was acceptance for the first time in her life. So she thought she was the luckiest girl, right, with a fairy tale relationship, and that she won the jackpot. Would you agree? But only to realize she was just a girl that was used for a short period of time until the next girl shows up, right? Eventually, that relationship soured, as you can imagine, because it doesn't last, even though if the girls believe I'm the one and blah, 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 and the fantasy that they make up in their head. When reality hits, she suddenly found herself on the streets with nowhere to go. That is such a typical scenario. When they're done with you, the first thing they do is throw you to the curb. Out you go, no money, nowhere to live. They love doing that. Karen, once again, was back online, wanting to keep her amazing lifestyle that she has gotten used to. And it's really hard to get familiar with something and truly enjoy it. And then out of a sudden, you're not going to have all that. So out of desperation, they do anything, right? So some of the men offered to pay for her sexual content. Like if she was showing photos or videos of herself, they would pay her for it, right? And she's like, oh, this is simple and easy to get money on. And others offered her money to meet up with them for sex, right? So soon, Karen was not only exchanging sex for money, but also now she could buy all those luxurious items that she couldn't otherwise afford, but also buy herself expensive dinners, meals at the restaurants that she want to go to, and all the in places that are the hippest to go to. So this lifestyle became like her new normal. And her friends and teachers had no idea what was going on. And no one questioned her. So some of her family members thought that she was discovering her sexuality. That is so easily thrown out today. Oh yeah, blah, blah, blah. It's pretty sickening when I hear it. While others chose to look away. Once again, we have the two sides. One having this opinion of something, and the other ones doesn't want to deal with it, and they just ignore it, and they turn their backs to it, right? And Karen continued to exchange sex and sexual contact with older men to meet her needs, right? For a place to stay and to feel safe, but you're not really feeling safe because it's in a false emotional support. And then the transportation and the food and the clothing that everybody needs. So when somebody provides that, they think that is a good person that meets your needs, correct? But it isn't. However, the fact that this was all the support she had impacted on her self-image, and it made her feel stuck, because that's what happens in the end. She also discovered that incredible feeling of being desired and wanted. And what woman out there doesn't want to feel desired and wanted, right? So that's what's so scary about this whole thing. The validation that she got from older men was just as good as a drug she could ingest, right? But the high never seemed to last, and they don't. So it doesn't matter if you drink or do drugs or sex or whatever you do to get high. It's for the moment, and it doesn't last, right? So after experiencing several dangerous situations as well as mental health challenges from sleeping with strange men without realizing it at the time, she wanted out, right? But once Karen got lured by another old man on a dating app, and everything changed, right? He made like all kinds of promises about work and continue her education. He understood that she was what she was going through, and told her that he saw potential in her. That's a beautiful one. I love when they do that. He told her about the amazing, glamorous life that he lived, and he traveled from city to city. He was attending these high-profile events and all these exclusive clubs. And the temptation, look what I can give you, makes any girl want to run in straight into their arms, not understanding that they're falling in the life's biggest trap, right? And on top of that, he was like charming, handsome, and she believed she can trust him because they come off that way, and they tell you all the words that make us women or girls just lay in our back. Oh, he's so romantic, whatever, right? So they tell you the words you want to hear. And on top of that, he offered her a solution to her problem. So in her mind, there's nothing wrong with that, right? But instead of giving her a solution to her problem, he began to grooming her. He got her to the gym, telling her that she needed to lose weight, that she needed to get a sexy body, and he put her on this healthy diet and did all those beautiful things that for her, it made her trust him, right? Who wouldn't? So, he's just doing that to be kind, or he really cares about me, right? No. Then he said to her that he was a massage therapist and that she would learn to be one as well, because it was a good skill to have and she could always make a great living on it. He always makes sure of that one. He said he would teach her how to do massage therapy, right? He promised the money would be great, especially because she was so good looking, and they will love you. So she could simply just travel with him. Hopeless and not having any family support, Karen felt she had no other choice, and she said yes, right? Since she was so young, and actually too young to be legally licensed, so instead of training with a school, he said that she could just watch him and practice a bit to learn how to do it, right? It turns out that the kind of a massage he provided was erotic massage. So she was the selling point and he was a trafficker, but not realizing it. He started to post pictures of Karen when she is shirtless on like social media and on his website, on Craigslist, to get more clients and have her participate in that. It was very degrading and terrifying, but she was too scared to leave, and she felt like she had nowhere to go, and her trafficker kept reinforcing that to keep her under his control, right? She did what she had to do to survive, unfortunately. Karen was trafficked for, I think, almost 10 years. And when she tried to leave her trafficker, he would show up with like 5 other men, and they took her to somewhere, and they locked her up, and she was just tossed around between these multiple old men. When she tried to leave on few occasions, her trafficker always managed to stop her somehow. And Karen found herself in a horrendous situation and did not want to live anymore. And after one of the old men introduced her to crystal meth, Karen became consumed, and it was the only thing that could get her through her pain and suffering. She became like a shell, totally detached from all emotions, and she no longer had any respect for her body. Her body was no longer her own. A piece of it belonged to every single old man who had violated it. And Karen was labeled with a high price and sold as the goods to others. She has dealt with shame over sexual abuse from her childhood most of her life. And the human trafficking actually stripped her dignity. Eventually, she had a psychotic break, and she unfortunately overdosed at age 25. And that is the sad scenario that, a lot of people go through. And I think it's important people understand that it happens to all people of all gender and races, because they are exchanging sex to meet their needs, and the public needs to understand that in a better way, because when people are desperate and they have no choices, that's what they pick. And this is why I now work on a national level to bring as much needed awareness to the widespread issue of youth and young adults needing to exchange sex to meet their needs. And I want other trafficking survivors who may have been considering taking their own life, or who are not sure where to turn, to please understand that making that first call is scary, but nothing changes if you don't change something with yourself, right? In addition to working with other trafficking survivors, I want to help others to understand how the system works against the victims in many cases, and most importantly, how to survive. Because everyone can come out strong, resilient, and powerful. And because there is the other side of it. And victims coming out of human trafficking does not have a guidebook. And there is no easy path to follow that says that this is how you go ahead and move forward as a person with a history, as a businesswoman or an entrepreneur, right? The system that's supposed to protect them before, during, and after the human trafficking situation fails. And they fail so miserably, unfortunately. And no one has a play-by-play for life when he butts up against someone of the trauma you have experienced. And I want you to know how resilient you are. And if you have gone through it, understand you have a voice that matters. And I am very thankful for this opportunity to share how to overcome this type of trauma. And if you want to work with me, I'd be happy to help. And you can always please visit my website, Anna Enka Wellness. Use my code PODCASTAA and you will get your first sessions for $100. And if you have any questions while listening, please subscribe and leave your comments, and you will receive answers to your specific questions. Please hit the subscribe button so you never miss an episode. And if you love it, please give me a review and share it. And that will allow me to impact people worldwide. Thank you for listening. Love always, Anna.